Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. If you're viewing any of the podcasts on YouTube, please subscribe. To supporters of this podcast, we say thank you. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person, and virtual seminars. So please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Danielle Lopez, who transformed her struggles into stepping stones, proving that it's not about where you come from or the obstacles in your path, but how you handle them and who you choose to become. She says that her mission is to inspire others to realize that they have the power to overcome any challenge and achieve profound, sustainable growth. I'm excited to have her share with this podcast today. Danielle, I hope I'm pronouncing that first name correct. Uh, I am thrilled to have you share with listeners of this podcast today. So, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from?
Thank you so much, James, for having me. I'm based in Los Angeles, so sunny Los Angeles in Southern California. And I recently published my book, Prismatic: Step Out of Past Shadows and Into Your Radiant Future.
Okay, well, thank you so very much. I've had a chance to look at your profile. Very interesting, very inspiring, and you are a perfect guest for this podcast as I'm about encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming. And you seem to have fit the bill, if I
Oh,
may
thank
say.
you.
So, so let me begin by asking you this. How did you overcome some of the significant challenges that seem like you dealt with in your upbringing to achieve where you are now? Can you share a little bit about that with listeners of this podcast?
Absolutely. And my hope is that in being open and honest and telling people about my story and where it came from, lets other people know that what they're going through is okay. They're not alone and they could make it and they can get through it. So I was inspired to write this book because a few years ago, my professional background is pharmaceutical sales. I was in pharmaceutical sales and medical device sales for 10 years. And I was always working really hard to climb the ladder. And I finally achieved VP of sales in the nutraceutical manufacturing industry. And I was at the pinnacle of my career. Um, I was working basically 24 hours a day to support international clients while at the time I had, my girls were about 2 and 5 years old. I have a husband, I have a sometimes time for myself, but just all the pressure with work was really, really coming down on me. And I wasn't caring for my family or myself or the home the way that I should be. At that same time, my mom passed away suddenly and tragically. She had suffered from alcoholism her entire life, and she just had one of those days, drank too much, hit her head, and fell. And it was really the combination of the work stress and the home stress, and then my mom passing just unleashed a tidal wave of unresolved traumatic experiences from my childhood. So I thought to myself, I'm doing really great at work. How can I translate what I've learned in the professional field to my personal life to give myself a game plan to turn my life around? So I used what I learned in business and goal planning to set out a mission for myself to recover. So over the next year, I invested about $100,000 in personal development courses, different certifications, different seminars, health and wellness, like you name it. And then people would ask me, well, why are you attending all these seminars or juggling all these different responsibilities with your work and with your kids? And when I explained to them that it helped me overcome generational trauma, get in the best physical and mental shape of my life, and increase my business, then they wanted the blueprint. So I wrote the book, and it was really when I shared my story with people, I knew that was my gift in sharing with people that whatever they're going through, they can overcome. And here's a roadmap for you if you're not sure where to start.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have you share a little bit about how listeners of this podcast can get your book, but I'm interested in knowing a little bit about the trauma. You talk about going through trauma in your life. What was it that you dealt with that made you decide that you wanted to uh, write your book?
Growing up, I was often left neglected. My parents were drug addicts and alcohol abusers. And in the moment, in the time, I didn't really know why that was happening to me. And there was also some other things I was feeling disconnected with my peers about being the only biracial child in a predominantly white school and predominantly white neighborhood. I felt really excluded and really alone. And then my parents were not around, and I was an only child. So now, as an adult, looking back on the situation, I realized my dad was the way that he was because he had post traumatic stress disorder from Vietnam, and he still suffers with that today. My mom was dealing with alcoholism and drug abuse because when I look back to the way she was raised, she was actually born of incest, and her mom was fighting off this sexual abuse from her own father for years and years and years. So when we think of all these compounding traumas, it comes from your grandparents and to your
Mhm.
parents and you, and even farther back than you know. These are all bags that you didn't pack, and it's all baggage that you just have to carry. But when you look at it from that perspective and realize none of it's your problem, nothing for you to be ashamed of, here's how you can move forward and shed all those negative feelings about yourself or labels or limitations. That's when you can truly flourish.
Okay, I can understand that. Can you share the story behind your book? And I think you've done some of that with your previous statement. Uh, your book is about step out of past shadows and into your radiant future. Uh, and you talked about what inspired you to write it, but tell us a little bit about some of the principles of holistic success that you, I assume, talk about in your book. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And at the end, I'll share with you how I have some free resources for the readers so they can move through some of their own issues as well. So when I think about holistic success and following the path that I took to transform myself, I first started with my mental health, my physical health, my professional growth, my personal development, which leads to your financial stability, your
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and then your spiritual fulfillment. So I look at holistic health in all of those areas because everyone's definition of success is different, right? Some of us might just want to live on the beach in Mexico, which maybe doesn't cost a lot, or some of us have very high aspirations to run a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. That's a different level of success. So my book helps people first define their mission, vision, and values so they know what success means like to them. And then they'll move on to perform a gap analysis, which is something I took from the business world, applied to my life, but basically identifying where you are versus where you need to be and what's everything in between. And then that bridge to fill the gap is what I propose as the mastermind framework. So it's a 10-step goal setting process, but really involves things from neuroscience and psychology to really help you identify with your goals on a physical and emotional level, putting it into visual, putting it into affirmations, and really detailing every step to help you achieve your goal. Honestly, it's a foolproof plan as long as you follow it. And then that's where I come in for accountability if anybody needs help moving along the way, because you can apply those frameworks, gap analysis, and mastermind to any of the 7 areas in your life.
Well, it's obvious from reading your profile and listening to what you are saying that you really have succeeded in your professional life, and also looks like to me even in your personal life. So I guess I'm trying to uh, figure out at how to ask you to deal with or explain the importance of aligning personal values with professional goals, because that seemed to be something that I'm hearing from you, and how this alignment impacts your overall success or the overall success of listeners of this podcast.
That's such a great question because I think a lot of people move towards an opportunity or towards a job because their culture tells them that's the right thing to do, or their family encourages them or discourages them to do another thing. So growing up, I always viewed my parents as sick and I wanted to help them, which is a common characteristic of children of alcoholic parents. So I went into pharmaceutical sales. Also, growing up very poor, we had very little. There was, many times when our dinner and especially holiday dinners were provided from the generosity of neighbors and food banks. So from not having very much, I knew that there was something different available to me. So I knew that in pharmaceutical sales, I could help people and I could earn a lot of money along the way. And I was very successful in pharmaceutical sales, having won a lot of contests, sold a lot of things, trainer, moved up in the ranks. But then when I got to that pinnacle of my career and found myself working crazy hours, I realized this is not success for me. Having a lot of money is not a lot of success for me. I want to be helping people. I want to be spending time with my family. I want to be traveling. So, had I taken time to really identify my values, my mission, and my vision early on in my career, or
Mhm.
even going into the world, I think I would have found myself a lot happier a lot sooner. And that's why I always encourage people. I mean, you see people all the time with tons and tons of money and no time to spend it or no
Hmm.
loved ones to spend it with. Maybe that's their definition of success, or maybe it's not. Maybe it was a societal pressure for them, but
Mhm.
it's so, so important for all of those reasons to align your values with what you think is success.
Danielle, I love your response. My podcast is about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. And having pastored for 32 years before retiring, I wanted to do this podcast to have people on just like you, because there are folk who are listening who have gone through some very trying moments in their lives, or are still going through those trying moments, difficult situations, depression, whatever it may be, and just need some encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming words. What would you say, based upon your own experience, to these individuals?
It's hard to see it in the moment, but the universe is constantly unfolding and constantly evolving and wants to express itself through you and as you, right?
Mm.
So there is a plan that's unfolding in the background that's grander than you can ever imagine. And just know you are in the right place and you are at the right time. You need to keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what you're currently going through. It's how you go through it, the attitude you choose to
Mm.
have, and then who you're planning to become on the other side. And sometimes that is really, really hard to see, but just maintaining a positive attitude, maintaining a positive vibration, maintaining a positive outlook and steps for yourself to move forward, you can move forward.
Hmm. I love that. That's very, very powerful. And I'm certain that listeners of this podcast are taking it all in. Listeners, don't go to place, because we'll be right back with some more questions and discussion with Danielle. But I want to give Danielle the opportunity to share with listeners of this podcast where they can get your book. Uh, do you have a website or any other information that you want to share with listeners of this podcast at this time?
Thank you. So again, my book is titled Prismatic: Step Out of Past Shadows and Into Your Radiant Future by Danielle Lopez. It's available on Amazon. I keep it at a very accessible cost. It's even made available through Amazon Unlimited, Kindle Unlimited, and it will remain at 99 cents for the ebook. And then if you go to my website, so that's Danielle Lopez info/resources, you'll be able to unlock a treasure trove of resources for free that complement the book. So there's a workbook. The workbook and the book together, there's over 100 tools that if you utilize just one and really focus on that one, you could turn your life around. So there's a lot of great information in the book and the workbook. And then there's also some other great opportunities in there. So it's daniellelopez.info/resources.
All right. Thank you so very much for sharing that with listeners of this podcast. What are some practical strategies for effective communication and active listening in a sales environment for somebody who, is interested?
Absolutely. So active listening is so important because I think we're always listening so that we can formulate the response moving forward rather than listening to understanding what people's pain points are and being empathetic and actually being able to provide a solution to the problem that they have. So I have this technique, it's derived from NLP, it's called perceptual positions. And then just very briefly, if you want to close your eyes and think about a person that you want to gain a better relationship, better rapport with. It could be someone you want to make your client, someone who has an incredible network that you'd like to be dialed into, or it could be a coworker or a superior. So you have your person in mind. Okay, you have that person standing in front of you. Now, in your head, think about all the thoughts and emotions, feelings that you're having when you see that person and how you feel about that relationship.
Mm, okay. Mm,
Okay,
uh,
now I want you to switch positions. Now you go into their shoes. Here comes James, here comes the audience. Now think, as that person, what are they thinking about you? What thoughts and emotions do they have about you and your relationship?
mm,
Okay, we reverse roles. Next step, we're gonna come at both of those people, objective third party observer, looking at the relationship between you and that person. What are your opinions, thoughts, and emotions about that interaction and how that interaction can improve?
mm.
Okay. And last step, go back to your original position, swap thoughts with the third person. Now you've got a new perspective on that relationship, how you can gain better rapport, and how you can be a better listener and better serve that client.
Okay. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, how can professionals maintain, resilience and adaptability in the face of continuous change and adversity? Because obviously, I'm hearing this from you, and you're talking about it. So, could you tell me a little bit about it?
Absolutely. There's two things that I'd recommend because right now we're creating and downloading and learning so much more information at a much faster rate than any other time in history. So technology and trends and consumer buyer behavior, all that is constantly changing. So while it may be hard for some of us after work to enroll in a program or go to a seminar and all those things, I highly encourage micro learning, and it could be as easy as setting up a Google alert for the thing or the person you need to know more about. Or maybe there's so many different apps where you can download just snippets of the book to get that book information and listen to 10 minutes a day. So however you like to do that micro learning, it's important to do on a daily basis because 10 minutes one day ends up to over an hour by the end of the week, 4 is at the end of the month, and that's all investments you're making in yourself to be more valuable to a client. And then in terms of staying resilient in sales, I just imagine it's going to take 100 no's to get to a yes. Because when you set your expectations that way, just you want to get through these no's as fast as possible because you know the yes is on the other side. So
Mm.
just doing the hard thing, the yes is coming. Again, the universe has something in motion for you better than you can even imagine. It's just on the other side of this. So keep moving.
That's interesting because I heard a minister talk in terms of motivating the state, inspiring, and he talk about don't worry about the no's, just keep hearing them, just keep hearing them because on the other side of it you're going to get a yes. And that was very very inspiring. So I know exactly what you are saying. My last question to you is, what advice do you have for individuals, looking to make a significant career change? And we may have somebody listening to this podcast right now who's in a situation on a job and they're looking to make a change, or, want to take their professional development to the next level. Is there something you say to them? What would you say?
Sometimes we feel discouraged or bored or not challenged or underappreciated in our current role. There's so many reasons why people are dissatisfied with their job. I think the statistics are upwards to 60% in the United States, which is really sad. But
Mhm.
sometimes there's things in our current role that we could do to make it more satisfying. And this is
Okay.
really critical to know, especially in a difficult economy, especially when jobs are difficult to find. So if there's ways that you're not feeling challenged, how can you take on more opportunities or more projects or different types of clients? Or if you're feeling like you can't be creative, how can you express your creativity more in your job, whether it's through emails or marketing campaigns or the way you organize your office? So if there's not a way that you can meet your needs in your job by changing the environment or changing your responsibilities, then I would say it is important to find a new job, because every day you stay in a job that's undervaluing you or not allowing you to express yourself, you're depreciating when you could be
Mm.
doing better somewhere else. So in terms of looking for new opportunities, I think right now LinkedIn is a great place. It's in our current networks of people who know you and refer you. Having that warm lead will get you somewhere so much faster than applying for a job to people you don't know. So I think it's
Mm.
always really important to network with the people you know, previous employers, past employers, people who know your job experience, but really setting out a plan. So deciding what your values are, deciding what companies can really fulfill that for you, what jobs are best for you in that area, and then planning for the worst. So if you needed to take off 6 months to really invest in yourself and find the new
Mhm.
thing, have you saved 6 months worth of finances to be able to support that?
Mm. Okay. Well said. Danny, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast today.
Likewise, really
And
enjoyed our conversation.
yeah, I know listeners will benefit from what you have said to them. And I'm grateful for you. And thank you so much again. There you have it. Danielle Lopez, the author of Step Out of Past Shadows and Into Your Radiant Future.
That's it. Woo!
I love it. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.